WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
Ladson of Fond du Lac is the Democratic candidate for the 27th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Kay Ladson, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you.
So thank you for participating in our candidate interviews. I want to start with asking you, what's your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
Why I'm running for this office, after I was asked to run, I got to thinking about what I felt was missing in the community that I live in, the 27th, and maybe the whole state of Wisconsin. And I grew up on a small dairy farm in the southern part of the state, so I was the only child on a small dairy farm and did all those, 4-H type things. Went to a small school in the southern part of the state in Greene County, and I always felt this real great sense of community, no matter where I have lived, and I've lived in other places, okay? But I always went back to Wisconsin was this real sense of community. You felt that the people were there for you, and I don't feel that sense any longer. And my sense is that we are losing that feeling of community because we are experiencing things that are taking away our freedoms on a daily basis. And so the main focus of my campaign is to advocate for people's freedoms again. Okay, so that's the main focus, and that kind of gives me the main things that I support.
So what's an example of a bill that you would introduce if you're elected?
A bill that I would introduce, I would elected, probably doesn't fit into that what I just told you, okay? But my thought in terms of a bill that I could introduce that would be helpful to people of the state of Wisconsin is, I'm taking this from President Obama. 2010, he introduced, I think it was called the Plain Language Act, something like that. It was designed for the federal departments, so when they wrote their web pages and their instruction books, they used plain, concise language. Okay? And I would like to introduce a bill that says that we have to use that in the state of Wisconsin, not only for our departments, but for our laws as well. And referencing back to the Constitution Amendment that we had this past summer, nobody could understand that. I was talking to people and nobody understood that at all. And so I'm like, why don't we write something that the people can understand? This is another instance where we feel like we're losing our freedoms because we don't feel we're part of the government. So we need to have plain language in our laws and in the instructions from our departments. Okay?
So if you're elected, you'll be entering the legislature during a biennial budget year.
Okay.
The state is projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What would be your top two priorities for use of that surplus funding?
Number one would be the Child Care Counts Act. As people are aware, we in Wisconsin, as we're not alone, okay, other states are having a child care crisis. And we have a crisis in the terms of it's not accessible. We don't have a lot of child care areas. Some areas are, around where I live are defined like child care deserts. We just don't have it. If you can find it, that's, there's 3 or 4 children already slotted to go into one opening in a child care. Okay? It's not affordable at this point in time. Two ways not affordable. Not affordable for the young parents who need the child care, and then we don't have a living wage for the technical people who work there. Okay? And then we have unstable funding. We're on and we're off with it. So I would like to take some of that budget surplus and put it to, making the child care accounts permanent, and then looking at solutions that we can solve this issue once and for all, but solve it more than just as a stopgap measure. So that would be my number one thing. Okay.
Child care accounts.
Number two would be to use it for our school systems, our K through 12 school systems. When the CARE funding came in from the Biden administration for the schools, the legislature decided to keep our funding aids out to the school systems flat. So I think you could make a case that a good chunk of that $3 billion surplus that we're going to have belongs to the schools. So I would like to take that. I mean, we see schools now having referendums for operating expenses. You know, it used to be referendums were for big things, right? We have a school building that's falling apart, or it's so old we can't fix it any longer, or, you know, so we'd see it for buildings or major capital improvements to schools. Now we're doing that for things for, you know, in my mind I'm saying, so now we need a referendum to pay for the janitor's costs. We can't afford to buy maintenance supplies to keep our buildings running. Is that what you're telling me? So if that's true, then let's take some of that budget surplus and put it towards that. Now, just to be perfectly clear, I am not saying that we spend that whole budget surplus.
What about taxes? Any tax cuts or tax reform in your use of surplus dollars?
No.
No.
Not at this point in time.
Okay. You're talking a lot about K-12 education. What do you think is going well, and what really needs to be fixed in K-12 education?
Well, we have, and we're going to talk about this a lot today, we have a declining population, don't we? And that includes a lower birth rate. So we have a declining population in the schools. We have funding issues in terms of teacher compensation, and that gives us some retention problems. We experience a lot of technical issues with the COVID, things that we run, you know, technically with hybrid and our online classes, and then the mental health crisis. But I think the real issue there is the funding issue. I really do. I don't know how we deal with compensation for teachers or technology changes if we don't have the funds to do that. So I think we have to seriously address raising the revenue limits, okay? The key point here is raising the revenue limits, which is the amount that can be spent per student, which includes general aids and your property tax base.
What about higher education? What do you see as the future of Wisconsin's 4-year, 2-year colleges, technical colleges? What is that? What should the legislature focus on?
Wow. Can I go back to the school one?
Absolutely.
One thing, a point I wanted to make is, and this is controversial, but I really think we have to take a look at the K through 12 level at our voucher system. I don't think there's a state in the union that can afford to support two separate school systems. And if you think about this is what we are actually asking our taxpayers to do, is to support two separate physical systems. I mean, we've gone through this before in the United States. If you go back to the southern states in the separate but equal, you know, they had very, very poor educational outcomes. And a lot of those states are still fighting that battle of maintaining two physical systems. And they weren't even doing separate but equal. They were just doing separate.
Would you do away with the voucher system or just stop increasing funds?
I think we just have to seriously run some numbers and see what we could do. I don't think we can increase them any longer at this point in time. I mean, we keep talking, and a lot of these issues that we talk about in Wisconsin, we have the same problem. Declining population. So how can you keep increasing numbers and dividing through by a lower number and make anybody happy? Okay, it's just not going to work.
What about the higher education system?
Higher education. If we break that into like universities of Wisconsin versus the technical schools versus
two-year
colleges. So the University of Wisconsin has, again, declining population. They have, in my mind, an overdependence on tuition as a source of funding. And then they have a state that's looking at this in terms of a marketing, like a cost-benefit analysis. If I pay all this money, am I going to benefit for that in the long run? So I think you have to address those three separate issues with that.
Should the state be providing more money to the University of Wisconsin system?
Yeah, I think we have to get off of this dependence on tuition.
The state responsibility?
Yes. I mean, the education is a state responsibility, whether it's K through 12 or whether it's a 4-year college or a technical college or a 2-year college. I think we have been shirking that in the past because there was a time when it was more highly supported than it is now. Okay?
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how would you propose to address it?
So, workforce development, you're talking the aging of the population, okay? Yeah, so we have some issues with aging. So we can talk about perhaps making, getting more part-time jobs or looking at a different scheduling process for senior citizens. Now, if you do that, then you also have to work with the federal government in terms of Social Security, because you don't want to underpay seniors. I mean, we have a lot of seniors who are very smart and have done consulting, okay, and say, okay, I'll go back into the market, but I'm not going to work for, minimum wage doing this. And now I can't do very much because I'm going to bump into the limits on my Social Security, and I don't want to forfeit my Social Security benefits if that's what they're using. So we have
more flexibility for seniors to
do that,
in
right?
The workforce.
We could probably do some more with teenagers in terms of working apprenticeships while they're in school. I think that's a great resource, as long as we're paying them, again, a decent wage. Right? We don't want to,
Moving on to a couple more workforce questions.
Okay.
Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. These investments also provide an opportunity to invest in the state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
I have no problem with that. But again, we need to back that up with workforce training. So if we say, well, we need, I'm just making up a number now, 500 people in that area, but nobody's trained, well then, what can we do to incentivize our technical schools to get them, or 4-year colleges to get them trained, whether it's engineers or it's technicians at a lower level? So is it tuition assistance? Do we not have the professors? I mean, we can't jump on these things without thinking these through. And I would certainly like to see if it's an area where we need these people and we don't have the supply, then we're going to use tuition assistance to get them trained, okay?
Sure. Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I have a master's degree in finance, so I've worked with major corporations, international corporations, and actually worked with a cement company. So you get really close to that construction industry working with a cement company, okay? So yes, I am aware of it. We have a joint task force that was established by Governor Evers working on this issue, and they are working on things such as looking at the systems that are in place now to deal with it, and I think they're looking at not only the writing of these systems, what it says, but the actual nowadays when you talk about any type of payroll thing, you're talking about a computerized system, okay? So I think they're looking at the IT end of it also. They're looking at how we can deal with all the levels of government. And then they have a recommendation out there to apply some penalties for repeat offenders. Now, I would certainly support that task force. And I would also say if you're going to have repeat offenders, then yes, you need to have a penalty structure. You need to have a structure, probably a department set up that deals with this. Because I think it costs us somewhere around $40 million a year, right? If I remember the numbers correctly, this problem causes, all right? So, but you need to hit businesses that do this where it counts, and that's in the checkbook. I mean, they respond to economic pressure just as like we do as consumers, all right? So if you're going to solve this, you're going to have to start with some penalties. I'm sorry, but that's the way it has to be.
Moving on to affordable housing. Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some have proposed government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue that keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing and as an issue, and what best addresses rental housing affordability? Rent control or building more rentals?
We don't have rent control in Wisconsin right now. We have no rent control. I think that would be a hard push. And as a person who has owned my own company in addition to working for other people, if I didn't own a rental company, but I look at that and say, so now when I want to fix up my units, I want to keep them looking good and keep them up to code and above code, but I'm going to have to have a rent increase. So now what does that mean? Do I have to go before the county board with all my spreadsheets and my numbers and spell this out and lay out a proposal to raise the rent, and then I have to wait around? I don't know if that sounds like an attractive investment for me.
You support building more rental units then?
Building, or I think there's other things we can do. I mean, we have a lot of property that is available for construction people to work with. We could rehab what we have available.
Support incentives for that?
For rehabbing. If you take a look at every downtown has apartments above buildings downtown. Maybe some of them aren't rented out because they're not up to code any longer. We could incentivate, and I like that, using something that's already there rather than creating another footprint. So I like the idea of incentivizing them to fix that up. All the big box stores that are now empty, can we not rehab those and make those rental spaces? Can we look at auxiliary dwelling units? I mean, or just maybe incentivizing our contractors who, after the subprime mortgage crisis in 2007 is kind of when this all kind of fell apart, and we've gone through, from the national level down, we haven't really done anything with it. I don't think they realized how traumatized the construction industry was and the real estate industry was by that whole subprime crisis. So we need to incentivize them to build housing at affordable level, 250, not 350, not 450. We look at our minimum lot sizes, look at our permitting procedures, our processes, and we discovered with abortion that we had an 1849 law on the books. Do we have 1849 laws on the books, local governments, in terms of permitting processes? We discovered during COVID that we had our employment system for the state was running on COBOL. Do we have municipalities? Old systems. Mm-hmm. So can we look at incentivating and working with this local
I need to move
municipalities?
Move us on to healthcare here. We're not going to get through our questions.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development issues, and around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
Well, one of the things that we can look at is a different way of payment. Right now, the payment is on volume. So, if you look at the Medicare, Medicaid payments, they're on volume. So every shot, every visit, every MRI gets a charge, which creates a lot of paperwork, a lot of shuffling through, making things happen, okay? A lot of boxes to check to get paid. There have been studies done looking at a cost-value thing. So you take a look at the procedure as a whole and look at the value of that, and if the procedure has that value, paying on the value, not everything that has to be done for that one procedure.
So fix it within the way Medicaid is billing.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mental health care is a related issue, growing concern for many Wisconsinites and for state and county budgets. In your district, what are you hearing on this mental health care issue, and how should it be addressed?
I hear issues mainly related to the teenagers and the whole thing from the COVID crisis. And an easy way is Medicaid expansion. You know, we haven't taken the Medicaid expansion in the state of Wisconsin. It's costing us billions of dollars not to do that. And one of the things that Medicaid does for both children and adults and teens in there is it has outreach programs for them. It has outreach programs, in-house programs. It has facilities if they need them. It has peer-to-peer counseling. So that to me is an easy way to get an immediate fix on some of the mental health care needs that we need, particularly for our younger ones. And they also have addiction treatment in that same slot under Medicaid, so I would like to see that done.
What about abortion policy? How should Wisconsin move forward on abortion?
That's my number one issue, okay? We just need to move forward and I advocate for women's right to have their own health care choice, right? So I would back and advocate, the Wisconsin Josh Call's lawsuit, which wants to get rid of that whole ban on abortion, or the Planned Parenthood lawsuit, which says that Wisconsin protects the rights of women.
Should there be any limits on when an abortion can occur?
I would go with Kamala Harris on this one and get Roe v. Wade established, which has the limits by first trimester, second trimester, and then third trimester limits.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important are they? And also for the state to keep on schedule with reconstruction of aging interstates.
It's a very rural district, so Plymouth would be the largest city. It's about 8,500 people. I don't hear a lot on transportation.
How are the road conditions?
The roads conditions, yes. Particularly in the rural areas. I mean, I can tell you from, because I like to cut through the back roads to get to places, and sometimes trust me, we need to get these rural roads fixed, okay?
The environment, PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and how should it be addressed?
Yes, PFAS needs to be addressed. We've had a couple of bills introduced. We had the 1093 bill introduced earlier in the year, which wanted to ban any new products being introduced that had intentionally put PFAS in. It didn't go anywhere. I'd like to see that worked on again. And then the other PFAS bill that had grants going out to the communities for remediation. Governor Evers vetoed that because of the lack of teeth from the DNR. I think we just need to introduce these bills again and work on it. I mean, and this is the start. This is the first time we've started talking about this in Wisconsin. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to work on these two bills. I think this is a very important issue. When I look at the DNRs, they have a little interactive PFAS map, and we don't have any in my district, but I can see them on the edges. So it's just a matter of time. And if we have some money left over in that surplus from those other things, I think we could take, because the bill that's introduced did not have enough money for remediation, okay? So we need to bump that number up, and we need to get serious about this, I really do.
Last two questions for you today. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
My opponent is a MAGA Republican, and her primary issue seems to be abortion, and that is taking away women's health care choice for abortions in the state of Wisconsin. And that, as I said to you earlier, my thing is getting that community feeling back, which means we have to get our freedoms back. So I'm all about making sure that we maintain our freedoms of health care choice, our freedoms of making sure that our children have a public education close to them, making sure that we have freedom of speech, freedom to vote as we want to vote, freedom to vote without feeling intimidated, okay?
So that's your final question. If you are elected and you have a magic wand you can use in the state capitol and have just one issue resolved in a way that brings parties together, what would that issue be?
Oh, brings parties together. Well, then I would say that my plain language bill would probably make both parties happy, okay?
Well, thank you, Kay Ladson from Fond du Lac, a Democratic candidate for the 27th Assembly District. The election is November 5th. Kay Ladson, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
My pleasure.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.